the forgotten workhorse that won World War II. Dodge WC series. Everyone remembers the Jeep, the plucky little 4x4 bouncing through war-torn Europe, the symbol of American grit, the poster child of World War II mobility. But here's what they don't tell you in the history books. While the Jeep was out there getting famous, there was another vehicle doing the actual heavy lifting, hauling ammo through African sandstorms, dragging artillery through Italian mud, carrying wounded soldiers out of Pacific jungles. Over 250,000 of them were built. They served on every single front. And after the war, they literally helped rebuild the world they just fought to save. So why does nobody remember them? Today, we're telling the story of the Dodge WC series, the truck that actually won the war. December 1941, America just entered the war, and the Pentagon has a massive problem. They need vehicles, thousands of them, tens of thousands, but not little scout cars. They need workhorses, trucks that can haul half a ton of supplies through a desert at noon, and then do it again through a blizzard at midnight. The Jeep could carry 4 guys and a machine gun. Great. But who's hauling the fuel, the food, the artillery shells, the radios that kept entire divisions connected? Enter Dodge, and enter the WC series. It didn't get magazine covers. It didn't get Hollywood movies. But without it, D-Day doesn't happen. The North Africa campaign stalls out. The Pacific island hopping strategy collapses. This is the story of the most important truck you've never heard of, and how it became the grandfather of every serious 4x4 pickup that came after. Birth of a workhorse. Let's rewind to 1940. Europe's already burning. France just fell. Britain's hanging on by a thread. And the U.S. Army is looking at its motor pool and realizing we are catastrophically unprepared. Dodge had already been making military trucks since World War I. But now, the Army came back with a shopping list that would make any engineer sweat. They wanted a truck, 4-wheel drive, capable of carrying 1,500 pounds, twice what a Jeep could handle, powered by something reliable enough to run on whatever fuel you could scrounge in a war zone, simple enough that a mechanic could fix it in a foxhole with a wrench and a prayer. Oh, and they needed it yesterday. Dodge went to work. They started with their VC half-ton, which was a civilian-based design that was already tough. But tough wasn't enough. So they stripped it down and rebuilt it from the chassis up. What emerged was the WC series, W for 1941 model year, C for half-ton rating, though it could haul way more if you didn't care about the suspension crying for mercy. Under the hood, a 3.8-liter flathead inline-6, 92 horsepower. Sounds cute until you realize this thing had more low-end torque than common sense. It wasn't fast, it wasn't sexy, but it would pull a house off its foundation if you asked it to. 4-wheel drive with a 2-speed transfer case, beam axles front and rear, leaf springs that could double as medieval weapons, and they built over 250,000 of them. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just one truck. The WC series was an entire family. Cargo haulers, ambulances, weapons carriers, command cars with radios the size of refrigerators, panel vans, and even trucks with winches that could pull a Sherman tank out of a ditch. Every variation had one thing in common. They were built for war, not comfort. And they were about to prove it on the most brutal testing grounds imaginable. The backbone of World War II. North Africa. Hell on wheels. Let's start in the Sahara, 1942. Picture this: 120-degree heat. Sand getting into every mechanical component you can imagine. No roads, no shade, just endless dunes and the occasional German patrol trying to kill you. The Jeep, great for recon. Terrible for hauling the 500 gallons of fuel your tank column needs to not become a very expensive paperweight. That's where the Dodge WC-52 came in. These trucks formed the logistics backbone of the North Africa campaign. They carried jerry cans of fuel, crates of ammo, and water. So much water. Because in the desert, water is more valuable than gasoline. They drove in convoys. No headlights. Blackout driving to avoid Luftwaffe bombers. Drivers navigating by starlight and sheer luck. Engines overheating. Radiators boiling over. But yet, they kept moving. There's a reason Rommel called American logistics unfair. It wasn't just the equipment. It was trucks like this that made the whole machine work. The Jeep got the glory. The Dodge got the blisters.
One mechanic stationed in Belgium wrote home, "The Jeep is cute. The Dodge is a mule with an engine. I'll take the mule." These trucks hauled ammo to the Battle of the Bulge. They carried radios that coordinated airstrikes. They dragged artillery pieces up mountain roads in Italy that goats wouldn't climb. And when they broke down, which was rare, you could fix them with parts scavenged from a dozen other wrecks. No computers, no sensors, just steel, oil, and stubbornness. The Pacific. Jungle rot and monsoons. Now let's talk about the Pacific theater. Because if North Africa was hell, the Pacific was hell's humid basement. Imagine 100% humidity, rain that doesn't stop for weeks, jungle trails that aren't trails, just vague suggestions, mud that swallows trucks whole, and rust. Oh, the rust. Metal corrodes in weeks, engines seize, electrical systems short out. The WC series? Still running. They island hopped from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, hauling supplies through monsoons, transporting wounded Marines under sniper fire, dragging landing craft off beaches when nothing else could get traction. One famous story, and I can't verify this, but I want it to be true, involves a WC-51 that got stuck in a river crossing in the Philippines. The driver abandoned it, assuming it was done. 3 days later, another convoy found it, still submerged, still stuck. They winched it out, drained the water, changed the oil. It started on the second try. That's not engineering. That's witchcraft. By the time the war ended in August 1945, the Dodge WC series had served on every continent except Antarctica. It had outlasted the engineers who designed it, outlasted the factories that built it, and its story still wasn't over. After the guns fell silent. VJ Day, August 15th, 1945. The war is over. And suddenly, the military has 250,000 trucks it doesn't need anymore. So what do you do with an army's worth of surplus vehicles? You sell them. Cheap. Farmers bought them. Construction companies. Logging operations. Some guy in Montana probably bought 6 of them for the price of a used tractor. They scattered across the world, Europe, Australia, South America. You could find ex-military Dodge WC trucks hauling lumber in Norway, plowing fields in France, or towing broken-down cars in Argentina. These things were unkillable. Farmers loved them because you could beat them half to death and they'd still start. They didn't care about creature comforts. They cared about getting the hay in before the rain. But here's where it gets interesting. Dodge looked at these surplus trucks, looked at all the farmers and contractors buying them, and had an idea. What if we made a civilian version? The Dodge Power Wagon hits the market. First factory-produced civilian 4x4 pickup in America, it was basically a refined WC series with a prettier grille and an actual cab that didn't leak. Same tough frame, same flathead 6, same transfer case that could pull a house. And it became a legend. The Power Wagon went on to define what a serious work truck could be. It's the grandfather of every heavy-duty pickup you see today. Every F-250, every Ram 2500, every Silverado HD. They all trace their DNA back to this, a war-surplus Dodge that refused to quit. Meanwhile, the original WC trucks kept working. Some are still working today, 80 years later, with their original engines. There are restoration communities dedicated to keeping them alive. Guys who hunt through barns and fields looking for rusty hulks to bring back to life. Because once you understand what these trucks survived, you can't help but respect them. They carried a generation through the worst war in human history. Then they helped rebuild the world afterward. Forgotten, but unbroken. Here's the thing about history. It loves heroes, iconic symbols. The Jeep got that treatment. It got movies, merchandise, a whole brand identity. The Dodge WC series? It got forgotten. Not because it wasn't important, not because it didn't do the job, but because workhorses don't get parades. They get put back in the barn. But talk to the people who restore these trucks today, and you'll hear a different story. They'll tell you about finding one buried in a farmer's field, frames still solid under 40 years of rust. About rebuilding a Flathead 6 and hearing it fire for the first time in decades. About driving one down a dirt road and feeling the same suspension that bounced through the Ardennes forest. These aren't museum pieces to them. They're time machines. Some still have the original Army star on the door. Some have hand-painted unit markings. Some have dents that might have come from shrapnel or might have come from a farmer hitting a fence post in 1953. You'll never know. One restorer told me, the Jeep is a monument. The Dodge is a tombstone. It marks where the real work got done. And maybe that's the perfect summary. Because when you needed to cross 100 miles of enemy territory with a truckload of ammo, you didn't call for a Jeep. You called for a Dodge. So, let's bring it home. The Dodge WC series built between 1940 and 1945 weren't just trucks. They were lifelines. They carried the fuel that powered the tanks, the ammo that loaded the guns, the radios that coordinated the attacks, the wounded who deserved to make it home. Over 250,000 built. Every major front, every climate, every nightmare scenario the war could throw at them. And when it was over, they kept going, became farm trucks, work trucks, the foundation for the first true civilian 4x4. The Jeep may have won the headlines, but the Dodge WC won the war. So here's my question for you. If you had to cross enemy lines in 1944, which would you trust? The iconic Jeep or this unsung Dodge workhorse that carried an entire generation on its back? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you made it this far, hit subscribe, because next time we're digging into another forgotten machine that changed automotive history.